great respect for our law enforcement community, and I realize the dangerous job that they do every day. Out of respect for the tragic death of State Trooper First Class Aaron Pelletier, we won't be raising the pride flag today. It's already up on the pole at half-staff in honor of his passing.
It was a pride ceremony today at Wethersfield Town Hall, Governor Lamont in attendance. The flagpole at the center of the controversy. At last night's council meeting, Councillor Rich Bailey requested the town fly the American Blue Line flag in honor of TFC Aaron Pelletier, who was killed in the line of duty. Town council voted it down. What does the Blue Line flag mean to you?
Represent racism and antagonism to many, many people. And even if you don't personally believe that and you fly it at your own house and you think it means something to you that's much more positive, it's just not how many people feel about it. It's not appropriate to raise over our town hall, especially when our flag policy prohibits us from doing anything that's associated with hate.
Associated with hate. People are mortified by this whole story. Joining me now, Inez Stepman, Senior Policy Analyst for the Independent Women's Forum. And as your husband, Jared, actually has a great piece about this up on the Daily Signal. I mean, I'm horrified myself, but I'm not surprised. I understand that that's the American flag. Now, it might not be the American flag I want, it may not be the American flag of our forefathers, but it's very obvious which flag are you allowed to besmirch, which flag flies over the embassies. That's the new flag.
Yeah, I mean, I think the left is smarter about symbols often than the right, which is why they understand very well when somebody drives a scooter over a pride flag painted on the ground, it's treated as a very serious incident, while when there is mass sort of defacement of American statues of American heroes across the country, most recently in Washington, D.C., that is treated as no big deal, a little over exuberance in mostly peaceful rioting, right? And I think that they're actually quote unquote right about this, not about the symbols that they want to elevate, but they're correct that there always are symbols in society, and they've declared what the symbols are that the society is not allowed to desecrate. And unfortunately, right now, that's the pride flag instead of the American flag.
It is. I talked about this in the open of the show. A lot of people on the right, they wake up one day and you see this stuff and you're horrified by it and you say things like, how did this happen? And why isn't anyone doing anything? But we don't understand that it's taken decades of these people taking over the institutions, building for themselves essentially a protection network that keeps them out of trouble so they can do the things they do. That's what they've done. They put in so much work. It took decades to get here. And now the animals in certain areas get to act with impunity.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difference, right? There's an institutional protection for this kind of behavior if you're desecrating the right symbols, and vice versa. Merely displaying the old symbols is enough to, if not by law, we still have certain restrictions from the First Amendment, at least culturally, socially, to put you in the social program category, right? Demonstrated flying the thin blue line flag in that example is a great sort of example of how that works, right? It's impossible to fly that flag off of the Capitol because it symbolizes hate. Is that what she said? But the various political flags of the left, of course, do get prominence not only in capitals, painted on our streets, right? Washington, D.C. has an entire giant mural on the bottom of 16th Street that says Black Lives Matter. And of course, the pride flag is prominently displayed everywhere on the official forums like the White House, like in Congress, right? So again, these things matter. I think there's sometimes a tendency on the right to think of these things as sort of quibbles or let the activists who really care about this stuff really go for a fight about what flag flies over the Capitol. But actually, wars have been started for less. This is not a small symbolic matter. It actually does represent who we are. And increasingly, sadly, as you said, Jesse, the pride flag represents America to the world and not the American flag.
Yeah, it is awful. And the weakness of the right when it comes to this stuff, and I'm not just talking about today's low-T GOP that I whine about all the time. Over the years, and honestly, I'll point fingers at myself, I was very much a hands-off, laissez-faire type guy, live and let live type guy. But freedom, it's very obvious, freedom has to be maintained through some sort of force and social standards. And if they're going to be the animals trying to tear the statues down, and you believe you don't want to violate their freedom, well, your country's going to be gone. There's not really a different way, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, there is no neutrality in the public square. I think what we've had for the last 60 or 70 years in sort of discourse in the country has been a public square where the left advances very strong normative ideas of theirs about what is good and what is bad, and uses and infiltrates all of the institutions towards those actual concrete purposes of what they want to see in terms of content pumped out by these institutions, whether we're talking about K-12 schools, whether we're talking about universities, whether we're talking about government agencies. They have an actual agenda and concrete set of principles that they're pushing forward. And then the right retreats to proceduralism. Now, I'm not against proceduralism. I mean, it's very important to set rules of the road, but that ultimately we've seen what happens when that's the case, right? What happens is the right retreats into saying, well, everybody has the right to say whatever they want, which is true, but doesn't actually address the fact that one view is being advanced in a very aggressive way through the institutions. And we've totally lost the ability of thinking about things in the way that I think was very common in the United States and in politics, particularly before the 1960s, which is the states are the venue, primarily depending on the issue, but the states are the venue where we as citizens get together and vote on what we think is good, not just what rules of the road there are, what neutral sort of protections we're all going to agree to, but what we think is good. And there are parts of the right that I think are interested in recovering that, but I think that's what you're pointing to when you say that that the right has this sort of constitutional weakness where for the last 50, 60, 70 years, it's not meeting fire with fire. It'll meet fire with some kind of glancing off blow about, well, everybody, has freedom of speech or the right to protest, and doesn't actually address the content of what is being pushed in our institutions. We have to get more comfortable with just enforcing a vision of the good and actually confronting a vision of the good that I think, obviously I think the right has the correct vision of the good. And I think we have a very good quote unquote argument to make. And that is what politics is. That's what making law is. All law has some kind of foundation of morality or perspective. There's no neutrality here, except the right pretends that neutrality exists, and the left has never had those illusions.
Yeah, it's just a cloak for cowardice, in my opinion, for the most part. We know all the right things to do. Of course, we're not going to actually do any of those things. That would be too icky. I don't want to get my hands dirty, but I definitely know the right thing to do. Inez, thank you so much. I'm out of time. I can talk to you for an hour. Come back soon. All right.
Thanks, Jess.